My name is Dylan. I'm 32 and last December I got erased by my own family. It started with an email. No call, no warning, just a subject line that read holiday plans. I clicked expecting a potluck list or maybe travel instructions. Instead, I got, Dylan, we've decided it's best if you sit this one out. The family is feeling uncomfortable. Hope you understand. 3 lines, no explanation, no, we love you, but just you make people uncomfortable. Please vanish. I was sitting at my kitchen table, half a cup of cold coffee in front of me. Laptop barely booted. I kept rereading it, waiting for the text to change for my brain to correct what my heart didn't want to believe, but it stayed the same. Cold, dismissive, final. It wasn't just an uninvite. It was a message: you don't belong here anymore. The worst part, I wasn't even surprised. Things had been shifting for a while. My mom stopped asking me to come early and help with cooking. My dad only called when he needed something, usually alone. My sister Bree and her husband Paul would whisper and change the subject when I entered a room. Still, I showed up. Every holiday, every birthday. I brought wine, cleaned dishes, forced smiles. I paid for takeout when they forgot to plan dinner. I pretended not to notice when everyone else got warm hugs, and I got polite nods. I kept thinking maybe if I just kept showing up, it'd go back to how it was. It didn't. I didn't respond to the email. I waited. 1 day, 2, a week. Nothing. No follow-up, no call, not even a guilt text from my mom. Then, like some cosmic joke, a Venmo request popped up. Waj, $850. Your share of the holiday groceries. From my dad? They disinvited me and expected me to chip in. I blinked at the screen, laughed, alone in my quiet apartment. I sent back $1.85 with a note. Didn't eat, don't pay. Then I started pulling plugs. First up, the Costco card. It was under my name. They'd been using it for years like it was theirs. I imagined my mom at the checkout line, cart full of shrimp platters and toilet paper, trying to swipe and getting denied. I didn't warn her. Next, Amazon. They'd been mooching off my Prime for free shipping groceries, even streaming. My dad loved those war documentaries. Too bad. Password changed. Devices removed. Then came the real hammer, the Amex card. Joint account. I'd added them years ago when my credit was good and theirs wasn't. They maxed it out. I paid it down, quietly, repeatedly. I flagged the card for review. Explained I suspected unauthorized charges. Boom, account frozen. 2 days later, my phone rang. Mom blinking across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. Finally, I picked up. She was sobbing, not apologizing, just crying like I'd drowned a puppy. How could you do this to us? We're your family. I let her talk. She didn't ask what was wrong, didn't ask why, just accused. She called me selfish, vindictive, said I was hurting people who loved me. But I didn't feel guilty. And that scared her more than anything. 3 days after that, my sister Bree texted me. Was that really necessary? No context, no greeting, like I'd just torched a birthday cake and walked out. I stared at the message. The last time she'd texted me was asking for help covering their broken furnace. No thank you, just a Cash App link. Now, suddenly, she's the moral compass. I didn't reply. That night, a new group text appeared. My mom had made a new Costco membership. The message read, new family account. Me, Bree, Paul. Thanks to real family for stepping up. I laughed. They thought that would sting, that it would make me jealous, left out, wounded. It didn't. It made things clear. They weren't just cutting me off, they were replacing me, and expected me to feel lucky for being excluded. So I kept going. Phone plans still under me. I'd added them years ago when I had a corporate discount. It was supposed to be temporary. 6 years later, I was still paying. Only my dad occasionally sent a $30 Venmo labeled phone. I gave them a week's notice. Phone plan ends Friday. Please switch to your own account. No reply. Friday came. At 12:01 p.m., their lines went dark. I got the confirmation email. 3 lines deactivated. It took 2 hours for the explosion. First, my dad called me from some random landline. I ignored it. Then the voicemail started. Angry, then panicked, then guilt-laced. You shut off my phone while I was trying to refill a prescription. You're playing with people's safety. This is cruel, Dylan, just cruel. Later that night, my cousin Gina messaged me on Instagram. We hadn't talked in over a year. Hey, your mom called me today. She said you're going through something. Is everything okay? There it was. The campaign had begun. I wasn't protecting myself. I was unstable, unwell, acting out. I typed, paused, then replied, "I'm fine. Nothing else. Just facts." Because I knew what came next. They'd rewrite the story, turn me into the villain, the troubled one, the one who snapped. But what they didn't know, I kept everything. Screenshots, receipts, Venmos, texts, emails. The spreadsheet with every dollar I'd spent for them over the past 2 years. Over 11,000. They'd called me selfish. But I was the one paying for their streaming, their meds, their groceries, even their stupid vacation last spring, and I was just getting started. By mid-December, something shifted. No more texts, no phone calls, no holiday guilt bombs, just silence. But not the peaceful kind. It felt calculated, tactical, like they were regrouping behind the scenes. I pictured it easily. Mom on the phone with Bree dad pacing the kitchen, rehearsing what they'd say if anyone asked why I wasn't around. They weren't ignoring me. They were constructing a version of events where they were victims and I was just unstable. Then I got a fraud alert from Amex. Someone tried to make a $2 $100 purchase at a home appliance store. The shipping address, my parents' house. The email account, my dad's. The card, the same one I had already frozen. They were still trying to use it. After everything being cut off, ignored, slandered, they had the audacity to swipe my card like it was just another day. I didn't call them, I called the bank. The rep asked if I wanted to dispute the charge. Yes, I said, and I need to tell you the whole story. I laid it all out. How I'd been the primary card holder. How my parents piggybacked on my good credit. How I'd been quietly paying down their debts for years, and now they were trying to keep spending like nothing had changed. There was a long pause. Then the rep said, "We can launch a full audit and internal investigation if you'd like." Please do. That night, I opened my laptop and went hunting for everything. Receipts, emails, screenshots, Venmo transfers, Amazon charges, bank statements. It wasn't just the big things. It was the accumulation of small things, the $25 here, the $40 there. Emergency groceries. Can you cover this car repair real quick? Dad's meds are too expensive this month. Can you help? 2 hours later, I had a spreadsheet with columns, dates, and totals. The number stunned me, $14 or $370. All out of my pocket. All without a single thank you. That same night, I got an email from my mom. It wasn't an apology, it was sugar-coated poison. We've all made mistakes. Families shouldn't fall apart over money. I miss you. But if you're determined to make this ugly, we can go there too. That sentence hit me like a brick. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't an emotional plea. It was a warning, a threat neatly tucked inside faux concern. I didn't reply. Instead, I started backing up every piece of evidence I had. Uploaded everything to a cloud folder, encrypted it, printed hard copies and locked them in a fireproof box, made USB backups and hid them in my closet. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I'd run out of steam like I always did, that I'd show up with a pie and a fake smile, that I'd fold like before. But something in me had cracked. And that kind of break doesn't heal the same way. 4 days before Christmas, I got a delivery confirmation someone had signed for a certified letter sent to my apartment. I wasn't expecting anything. When I opened it, my heart actually skipped. It was from a law firm. My parents had hired a lawyer. Inside, a cease and desist. A formal notice accusing me of interfering with financial matters, spreading false and damaging claims, and engaging in a targeted effort to harm the family's reputation. There was even a section that warned me not to talk to third parties about our disputes. It was a joke, barely professional, the kind of thing you copy from a legal website for 90 and hope it scares someone. But the message was clear: shut up or we'll escalate. I didn't reply to the lawyer. Instead, I forwarded the letter to the Amex fraud team. They'd just called me earlier that week. The preliminary audit was done. They'd flagged multiple charges over the past year. Electronics, hotel stays, flights, even a $700 pair of headphones. None of it matched my spending habits. None of it had been authorized. "Would you like to escalate this to our legal department?" they asked. Yes, I said. The next morning, I started closing every door I hadn't already sealed. I deleted the shared family calendar, birthdays, reminders, holidays, all of it. I removed them from my Spotify family plan. Logged every device out of Netflix, HBO Max, Hulu. Changed every password. Kicked out every ghost on every platform. I imagined the moment their screens went dark. Mom halfway through a baking show, Dad loading up another War Doc, and it didn't bring me satisfaction. It brought clarity. They didn't miss me. They missed the access. Later that night, I got a security alert from Amazon. Someone had tried to reset my password and change my recovery email. They failed. But the IP address my parents' house, they were still trying to sneak back in. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my brother. Congratulations, you ruined Christmas. Mom's a wreck. Hope you're proud. No question, no concern, just blame. Like I'd set the house on fire and then danced on the ashes. They didn't get it. I wasn't reacting to one slight. I was reacting to a pattern. To years of being used, dismissed, and gaslit. I was the quiet scaffolding behind their comfort. And the moment I stepped away, the whole thing collapsed. But instead of saying thank you, they tried to tear me down. That night I got one more email. No subject, no greeting. Just one sentence from my mom. You've made your choice. She was right. For the first time in my life I had. Not them telling me what I was allowed to feel. Not me bending to keep the peace. Not me patching cracks while they kicked holes. This was me drawing the line. And for once, I wasn't stepping back. 2 days after Christmas, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, it's Randy from your dad's old office. Saw something weird today. Thought you should know. Attached was a screenshot of a Facebook post. My stomach dropped. There it was, my mother's profile picture smiling next to a wreath. And a status so perfectly manipulative, it could have been a script. The holidays are hard when someone you love turns on you. We've tried for years to help. We've offered love, forgiveness, patience. But some wounds run deep. Pray for our family. No names, no details. Just vague enough to look noble and just pointed enough that everyone reading it knew exactly who she meant. Me. She didn't stop there. The comments were flooded with, "You're so strong and family can be hard. Don't give up on her, people." I hadn't seen in a decade. Neighbors, church ladies, even my 8th grade piano teacher were chiming in with sympathy. "She's always been dramatic," one wrote. Another, "Some people you just can't reach." Praying for your peace. I didn't reply. I didn't post. I just stared at it. Then I scrolled further. She had tagged a few people in the comments. My cousin Laura, my sister-in-law Jess. That last one surprised me. Jess had never liked me, but she also wasn't the type to get pulled into drama. Or so I thought. That afternoon, I got a message from Laura. "Hey, I saw your mom's post. Is everything okay?" I was tired of playing defense. I sent her a compressed folder. Receipts, screenshots, fraud alerts, the lawyer's letter, everything. 20 minutes later, she replied, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. This is insane." That night, I got another alert. Someone tried to access my cloud storage. 2 failed login attempts from an IP address in my parents' town, one from a different state. They weren't just airing me out online. They were actively trying to figure out what I had, what I'd collected, what they needed to shut down. The files were safe, triple encrypted, backed up twice, but that wasn't the point. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were trying to cover their tracks. On New Year's Eve, it happened again. This time, someone tried to access my backup drive. 2-factor authentication held. They failed. Again. I didn't need to guess. I knew who it was. Then came the quiet. No calls, no texts, no fake concern emails from mom with Bible verses and soft guilt. Just silence. Dense and heavy. Until a call came through from a blocked number. I let it ring out. Then came the voicemail. It was my dad. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Dylan, let's talk. This has gotten out of hand. No need to involve lawyers. We can resolve this like adults. If you're done with the games, we're open to a conversation." He still didn't get it. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a cry for attention. It was the final chapter. I didn't respond with a call. I sent a letter certified with return receipt requested, inside a bullet point list. Every charge I'd paid on the Amex they were still using. The fraud alerts and the audit results from the credit card company. Screenshots of their attempts to regain account access. A copy of the cease and desist. Their Facebook post. My mom's attempt to rewrite the narrative. I made sure both my parents and my brother got identical copies. No note, no signature, just facts. A few days later, my brother Mike finally texted, "So you really want to burn everything down, huh? Not a question?" An accusation, as if I'd walked away from a peaceful home and not a years-long scam. But that wasn't the most unexpected message I got. That came from Jess. "Can we talk, just you and me?" I hesitated. Jess had never been kind to me. Cold at best, passive-aggressive at worst. But if she was reaching out now, something was up. We scheduled a call. Her voice was low, cautious. I could tell she was in a bedroom, door closed, whispering. She didn't waste time. "I've been watching all of this unfold," she said. "The post, the silence, the card shutdowns. I used to think you were dramatic, but I don't anymore. She told me Mom had been borrowing money from her and Mike behind everyone's backs, always in cash, always with a guilt-heavy excuse. Fixing the car, getting your dad a gift, helping a neighbor in crisis, always something. And always in a way that made you feel like you couldn't say no. Then came the kicker. A few weeks before Christmas, your mom asked to borrow my card real quick. Said she forgot hers. Bought herself a $900 purse. I stayed quiet. She said it was a mistake, said she'd pay me back, never did. Mike didn't care, said it wasn't a big deal. But now, she took a breath. Now, I'm not sure who I've been protecting anymore. Then she dropped a final bomb. She's turning people against you so no one questions her. She's done it for years. I just never saw it until now. I didn't respond much. I didn't need to. She knew. The next morning, Laura messaged me again. She'd looked into the post, asked around, quietly asked family members what they knew. Most had no idea what was happening. A few admitted they were told I'd had a breakdown. I sent Laura more receipts. She was stunned. Then something shifted again. By noon, my mom's Facebook post was gone. By 2 p.m., her entire profile was deleted. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. That night, I got another alert, multiple failed attempts to access my encrypted drive. New IP, different city, they were desperate. And I knew the desperation wasn't about clearing their name. It was about control. They needed the narrative to stay theirs. They couldn't allow me to take it back. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was the first Sunday of the new year around noon. The apartment was quiet, and I was finally relaxing, no alerts, no texts, no nonsense. Then someone knocked. No buzz from the call box, no delivery notice, just 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I live in a secure building. Whoever it was had followed someone in or waited for someone to leave. I checked the peephole. My parents. No suitcase, no bags, just them. Standing like this was any normal Sunday visit. My mom was holding something, a manila folder. I didn't open the door. They knocked again. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady when I said through the door, "You need to leave." Then Mom spoke just loud enough to carry through the wood. "We just want to talk, Dylan. We're ready to make peace. Let's not drag this out." I almost laughed. She sounded calm, measured, practiced. "I'm serious," I said. "Leave now. Or I call the police." There was a pause. Then my dad muttered something I couldn't hear. My mom knocked again, harder this time. "If you won't fix this," she said sharply, "we'll fix it for you." That's when I hit record. They stayed a moment longer. Then silence. No door slam, no goodbye, just gone. A second later, something slid under my door. The folder. I waited until I heard the elevator ding before picking it up. Inside, printed screenshots of text messages and emails. Mine. But everything was cropped, cut, stripped of context. One email I'd sent my cousin Laura explaining everything, trimmed down to a single threatening sentence. A few venting messages from years ago highlighted like evidence of a crime. At the back of the folder, a handwritten note. From my mom. "You don't want this to become public. Think about your job. Think about your future. Family should stay family." My hands were shaking. They'd come to intimidate me. They were bluffing poorly, but I'd seen this tactic before. Back when I helped them negotiate with a debt collector. When my dad tried to claim bankruptcy without telling my mom. When my mom lied about a bounced rent check and I took the hit. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about control. I scanned the note and every page of the fake evidence. Then I forwarded everything to my lawyer. Yes, by now I had one. I also worked in an industry where this kind of personal sabotage wouldn't just backfire, it could cost them far more than me. They thought they were clever, that they could frame me as volatile, unpredictable, unstable. But I'd been careful, deliberate, documenting everything, quietly, legally. That night, I got a text from Jess. "Still good to talk?" I said yes. She called within minutes. And this time, she had something for me. "I'm done pretending," she said. "I know I didn't stand up for you before, but now I will." She'd gone through her old texts, emails, voicemails. And what she found? Proof. Messages from my mom bragging about using my Amex. Chats with my brother Mike plotting how to get around my card freezes. Emails between them discussing how to make me look erratic and unbalanced to shut me down before I exposed them. Jess sent everything. Screenshots, voicemails, a full zip file. "I thought you might want this," she said. She didn't ask what I was going to do with it. She didn't have to. Because when I opened that folder and read my mother's words talking about planting seeds of doubt in people's minds, I felt something I hadn't felt since this started. Clarity. It had never been about money. It was about narrative, control, image. I was never the problem. I was the threat to their illusion. And now they were willing to lie, manipulate, and show up at my door just to stop me from exposing the truth. What they didn't realize, it was too late. They'd already exposed themselves. I wasn't planning to update anyone, not friends, not extended family, not the internet. I thought once I cut the financial ties, backed everything up, and handed the receipts to a lawyer, it would be over. But then came the fallout. A week after my parents showed up at my door, Jess messaged me again. "Mike and I are done." I froze. She went on. "I've been thinking about it for a while. But watching what they did to you, how deep it goes, I can't stay quiet. I can't stay married into this." She'd already opened her own bank account, started apartment hunting, and taken steps to separate her finances from Mike's. "He doesn't see it," she said. "Still thinks you're the problem." "But I do. I see it now." Then she offered something I didn't expect. More proof. Not just texts between my mom and brother. Not just receipts. This time, it was planning documents. Conversations about how to handle Dylan if things escalated. Screenshots of texts where my mom wrote, "We just need to make him doubt himself long enough. He always caves." Voicemails of my mom asking Jess to vouch for her, publicly saying she could twist it so I looked like I'd had a breakdown. They had a playbook, and I was the opponent. Except now one of their own was leaking the strategy. I took it all and added it to the folder, the one I'd labeled "in case they push too far." Then came a message from my cousin Laura. She'd talked to people in the family, quietly, not accusing, just asking questions. And what she found, most of them hadn't even known I was uninvited for the holidays. They were told I opted out because I was too overwhelmed to deal with family. Some were told I was in therapy, that I'd asked for space. One relative was told I'd stolen money from my parents and ghosted. They hadn't just lied to me. They'd lied about me. I wasn't hurt anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was strategic. That week, I sent a controlled info packet to a few key people, just enough to neutralize the worst of the rumors. A few select screenshots, the fraud alert, the cease and desist they'd tried to weaponize against me. I didn't write a sob story. I wrote the truth. And then something remarkable happened. People started reaching out, not with accusations, but apologies. "I didn't know, Dylan. I'm so sorry. That explains a lot. Honestly, your mom's post felt off, but I didn't know how to say it." The tide was turning. They couldn't control the narrative anymore. Too many people were asking questions. And just like that, their silence got louder. They stopped posting. Stopped messaging people. My mom's entire online presence disappeared. My dad deleted his LinkedIn. My brother went dark on social media. It was like watching a house slowly collapse under its own weight. Then came the call from Amex. The investigation was done. Several charges had been ruled unauthorized. Not only that, but the bank's legal department had flagged additional discrepancies. Purchases, account behavior, login IPs, it all pointed to misuse. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I asked for a day to think. That night, I got another email. Anonymous sender, but the subject line was clear: "Don't ruin this for everyone." Inside was a screenshot of an old tweet of mine. Harmless, years old, but taken out of context, it could be spun into something offensive. There was no message, just the implication. I forwarded it to my attorney. Then I changed every password I had. Again, they were getting desperate. I expected them to go underground, to vanish and sulk. But I should have known better. They wanted control. And when they couldn't get it legally or emotionally, they tried publicly. A week later, my old boss emailed me. Subject: "Quick heads up. Inside a link to a Facebook group. Private, small, filled with distant relatives, family, friends, and a few people from church." And right there, my mom had posted again. A long, rambling update about how financial betrayal had cost her peace, how she'd loved too much, how she wouldn't be silenced anymore. She never said my name. She didn't need to. The implication was clear. I was unstable, dangerous, a liar. I didn't reply. I didn't engage. I sent the screenshots to my lawyer. Then I went quiet. Let them scream into a void I no longer occupied. I wasn't fighting for validation anymore. I was fighting to protect myself. And oddly enough, I wasn't alone. Jess texted again 2 nights later. "They're still trying to paint you as unwell. I'm out. I've got a lawyer. If this ever goes to court, I'll testify." I didn't ask her to, but it mattered. Because this wasn't just about the money, or the cards, or the accounts. It was about liberation. Every time they twisted my words, every time they tried to guilt me or silence me, it only confirmed how right I was to walk away. The last time they tried to break me, they brought it to my door. This time they went after my job. A week after the Facebook smear campaign, my HR manager forwarded an anonymous complaint. It claimed I was unstable, vindictive, that I was targeting my elderly parents in a harassment campaign. It included cherry-picked screenshots, some real, some doctored and closed with the line, "If your company values integrity, you should investigate." They didn't sign it, but they didn't have to. I recognized the language, the tone, even the phrasing. It was my mother's favorite weapon, faux concern masking calculated destruction. HR flagged it as personal retaliation. No action taken, but still something broke. Not in the weak way, not in the defeated way, in the final way. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't trying to negotiate reason or make peace. I was done. The next day, I filed a formal fraud complaint through my bank's legal system. Attached everything: receipts, the audit screenshots, certified mail copies. Named every individual involved. Confirmed every unauthorized charge. Requested full financial investigation and restitution. And then I did one more thing. I wrote my own version of the story. Not public, not viral, just a carefully worded email to every family member who had been lied to. It wasn't emotional, it wasn't dramatic. It was factual. It included 5 attachments: proof of fraud, the cease and desist, the financial audit from Amex, a timeline of how I supported them financially, screenshots of my mom's direct manipulation and threats. I sent it and logged out. That was it. No demand for an apology, no request for understanding, just the truth delivered plainly. Then I blocked every one of them. Phone, email, socials, all of it. And I didn't feel guilty, because guilt had been their leash for years. Guilt is how they made me clean up their messes. Guilt is how they got free flights, paid phone bills, streaming insurance, meds, holidays without lifting a finger or saying thank you. And when the guilt didn't work anymore, they weaponized the one thing I had left: my reputation. But they failed, because they forgot who they were dealing with. The quiet one, the helper, the one who never made a scene. Turns out I was just quiet because I was watching. And now, I wasn't watching anymore, I was walking away. A few weeks later, Jess messaged me again. She had moved into her own apartment, filed for divorce, got her own phone plan, her own accounts, her own life. "You saved me," she wrote. "Watching you say no gave me the courage to finally leave." I stared at that message for a long time, because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a failure. Or a burden. Or the too much one. I felt free. And that's the thing about cutting ties. It doesn't just remove the poison, it makes room for something new. My apartment is still small, still quiet. But now when I wake up, it feels like mine. My air, my choices, my peace. The guilt is gone. And the silence. It's not a warning anymore. It's a victory. Let them lie. Let them gossip. Let them sit in the house I used to prop up with my paychecks in silence. Let them miss the free rides and blame me for every shortfall. That's their storm. I don't live there anymore. I'm not the villain. I'm not the unstable one. I'm not broken. I was just done being controlled. So no, I won't apologize for saving myself, because in the end, that's what this story is really about. Not revenge, not drama, not exposing anyone. Just freedom. And if they want to call that selfish, they're welcome to. I won't hear it. Story 2. My sister booked her honeymoon using my credit card in secret. "It's transitory," I said. They had already landed when I learned. "Calm down," she responded when I challenged her. We remain family. I thus issued her a bill for $4,800 in total. She abandoned me for Reed. The booking was recently flagged as unapproved by me. Mid-ship, the card was flagged. The return flight was canceled by the airline. When my lawyer phoned her 10 days later, she yelled. My sister was already on a Hawaiian beach when I realized she had taken from me. At work, I received the alert. Hawaiian Airlines was charged $800. At first, it didn't even register. I assumed it must be scam. I hadn't made any reservations. I wasn't even making travel plans. However, upon careful inspection, I discovered that the charge was made at 2:43 a.m. Sunday. She got married that evening. My stomach plummeted at that point. 2 days prior, Lily had been married. My parents' home in Arizona hosted a backyard wedding. They were clearly trying to keep their expenses under control, as seen by their last-minute simplicity and several cost-cutting measures. Throughout the evening, her new husband Jordan hardly spoke. I assumed he was simply overburdened. In hindsight, he most likely simply didn't want to discuss their plans. There was no honeymoon fund that I had seen. No registry, no plans. They claimed to be working on a low-key project. Later. This, I suppose, was accurate in theory. I thought I may be overreacting when I opened Instagram. It was there that I saw it. She continued to share her experience, her legs extended out on a lounge chair in a brief film. A newly landed ring palm tree with the ocean in the backdrop as a caption. Maui has a hashtag. I sat there looking at it as if I had just been struck. Then everything made sense. Over the weekend, my wallet had been in the guest room. We were all sleeping at the same house on Saturday night while the wedding was still going on, so I hadn't even considered it. She had instructed me to go to that room and get her charger. She responded, "Never mind, she'll get it herself." Halfway to my destination, she only needed it. I put her on voicemail when I phoned. I texted but got no response. She eventually replied to the message after several hours, just one line. "We required some assistance. Don't panic. It's only a temporary situation." Then another. "You earn more than we do. Relax, we remain family." Still related, as if that made it okay. I didn't answer at all. I opened Venmo and requested the entire $4.08 from her. Despite seeing it, she never paid, simply left me alone. I thus did something that she probably didn't believe I did. I reported the charge as unauthorized, described everything, and phoned my credit card company. They informed me that they had contacted the airline, flagged the card, and started an inquiry. I was surprised by how quickly it moved. The airline canceled their return trip 2 days later. It wasn't until they unexpectedly returned early and showed up at my parents' place looking angry and sunburned that I found out. Lily rushed by me as if I hadn't been there. Jordan was silent for a moment. They were just together for 5 minutes when she began to quarrel with her mother in the kitchen. I didn't have to listen to the specifics. I had already begun the actual retaliation, and I knew exactly why they had returned. Lily didn't say she was sorry. After they returned early from Hawaii, due to a flagged return flight in the middle of their journey, she didn't even recognize what she had done. She said nothing. No calls, no texts, no. "Hello, apologies. To pay for my honeymoon, I engaged in a small amount of fraud. Nothing but quiet." 3 days later, I ran into her at our parents' house. As if nothing had occurred, she entered the home as like she owned it. My mother inquired about the trip's outcome. She blamed the airline for making a mistake and said everything was okay. Jordan hardly looked up from his phone as he sat like a mannequin at the kitchen table. I remained silent in front of everyone. I was curious to see how far she would take the act. I texted her the complete breakdown that evening. I created a lovely little invoice for $800.74 by compiling all the information from the flight receipt. Everything was listed, including flights, taxes, checked luggage, and seat preference. I underlined the purchase time and attached screenshots of the charge. 2:43 a.m. Sunday a.m. The moment she made the decision that I would cover the cost of their romantic retreat. Since we are still family, I included the invoice in a Venmo request with one line. After 5 minutes, she opened it and shut it. No answer. It dawned on me then that she had no intention of repaying me. She genuinely believed that I would just take it, that I was too weak or ashamed to protest, that I simply accept that as a sibling error and go on. So I gave Derek a call. Everything was stated by my lawyer. He made no hesitation at all. A civil claim will be made. Fraud using credit cards and the unauthorized use of financial instruments. You have digital evidence. First, we'll send out a note. However, this one is reliable. She received the call from his workplace the next day. Her response was not even explicitly communicated to me. My mother did. Lily apparently began to scream as soon as she heard the words. Legal action. After hanging up, she began destroying my phone. In an hour, 10 calls were missed. All of them were sent to voicemail. It was a lengthy tirade in the first message. She said that I was exaggerating and that it wasn't a huge problem. Jordan emphasized that I ought to have addressed her more like a sibling than a stranger. She never expressed regret. There was a difference in the second voicemail. More desperate. She repeated the same sentence again and over. I assumed you would just pardon me. That struck a chord, but it proved precisely what I suspected, so not in the way she intended. She was aware of her actions. She was aware that it was improper. She just believed that she was exempt from the restrictions. She and Jordan arrived at my house 2 days later. I opened the door even though I didn't want to allow them in. Lily had a plastic muffin container in her hand. In fact, she stated we brought something sweet so we could discuss it. As if this were a simple miscommunication. As if she had not committed fraud. They took seats on the sofa. She began by discussing their stress levels, how the wedding had depleted their funds, and how the trip had been her childhood ambition. What a true brother. Recognize, however, that Jordan had yet to speak. She then went straight to the point. You are destroying this family if you forward with this case. Do you want it that way? I took a while to respond. Allow the words to linger in the space. I glanced at Jordan, then at her. At last he spoke only one word. We had no intention of it getting this far. I questioned him about their intentions. He didn't respond. I made it apparent that I wasn't going to back down at that point. I have had enough of being the trustworthy person who gets past. I informed her that she had two options. Repay me right away or face me in court. She got up, took the muffins from the table as if I had somehow forfeited my claim to them, and left. After watching them drive off, I contacted Derek to find out what to do next. The lawsuit was being filed by us. She could play the victim if she so desired. A judge may watch her do it. Lily genuinely thought that nothing would stick, that I would calm off, and that I would be too ashamed to sue my own sister. She didn't know who she was up against. The court date arrived sooner than she most likely anticipated. Derek, my lawyer, was prepared. As if this were not his first family breakdown situation, he thoroughly prepared me and explained everything to me. To be honest, I appreciated that he didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't find it personal, just statistics and figures were useful. She appeared as though she were trying to win people over with her lovely blue sweater. Her lawyer, who most likely received free legal assistance, looked like he had been dragged off a park bench, which said a lot. Jordan remained silent and appeared to be trying to blend into his shirt collar. She never gave me a glance. The judge wasted no time. Derek explained the process, which involved using my credit card number while I was in bed. The fee, the date. Nothing was denied by her messages admitting it or by her unwillingness to reimburse me even after I requested her side. They made no attempt at all. That was essentially their whole defense. It wasn't all that horrible. She was going to pay eventually, and he can afford it. They said that I was exaggerating and that I was adding needless strain to her marriage. They attempted to claim that this had to do with feelings and animosity. The judge was unconcerned. There and then he decided in my favor. Ordered her to give me back the entire $800 plus interest and filing expenses. The total came to somewhat more than $5,000. Her payment deadline was 30 days. She walked right by me in the corridor after court as if I didn't exist. Jordan nodded at me awkwardly as if he was sorry, but he was unable to speak since she was beside him. It was a week before I heard from her. Then the calls began. Not from Lily, from all the others. She had apparently gone nuclear. I had volunteered to pay for the honeymoon as a wedding present, but I changed my mind and deceived her with a lawsuit she revealed to our entire extended family. She said that I was resentful, lonely, and always pursuing her because I was envious of her happiness. She portrayed me as this cold-blooded, avaricious monster who brought his sister to court in order to prove a point. What's the worst? A few of them took her word for it. My mother called out in tears, said that people were inquiring about what transpired, inquiring as to how her son could harm her daughter in that way. I was told I was chilly in a voicemail left by my Aunt Mary. I received a lengthy message from an older relative with whom I hardly ever spoke about how family should come before money. People who hadn't even asked for my perspective said all of this. They became Lily's personal team. In the meantime, I was sitting there with a voicemail in which she blatantly acknowledged using my card without my consent, a court order, and an invoice. I was prepared to let their thoughts go wild. The entire game was altered, though, when I suddenly recalled something. I had been contributing $700 a month to Lily and Jordan's rent for the last year and a half. That began when my mother confided in me in a low voice that they were having difficulties. There was no conversation at all. I replied yes when she asked. Each month I've been giving their landlord the money directly. No gratitude, no kudos. The train was silent. I put up with it because I feel obligated to. I had leverage now. My message to Lily was straightforward. Either you tell everyone the truth or this month's rent payment will be the last thing she sees. Although it didn't reply, I knew she received the message since my mother phoned 2 days later to let me know Lily wanted to have a family get-together. And because I was done playing defense, that's where things were going to change. Lily wants to chat at the house tomorrow night according to the text message my mom just sent. Everyone will be present. I was aware of it. A procedure to control harm. Her attempt to change the story to her advantage. In person, this time. She most likely believed she could mend some tears and place the responsibility back on me if she could get everyone in one place. However, I arrived as I entered my parents' home. There was already half the extended family present. Not everyone in the audience, but enough to cause discomfort. An aunt and 2 uncles. Grandma with her typical window-side location. Both of my parents appeared to have not slept. Jordan was also present. Lily sat like furniture in the corner, and she stood close to the center of the living room as if she were waiting to speak at her own funeral. No one grinned. I got no greetings. I waited by leaning against the wall rather than sitting. I had no intention of making this simple. Lily began by expressing gratitude to everyone there, as though this were a session of group therapy. She continued by talking about how misunderstanding caused things to spiral out of control and how she ought to have spoken with me directly. She never once used the term steal. She tried to vanish into the Pacific with a coconut in hand and purposefully used my credit card behind my back, but she never took responsibility for it. She gave the impression that we were fighting like siblings, as if we had to embrace it after I shattered her doll when we were 11 years old. She then used the victim card once more, accusing me of humiliating Jordan, embarrassing her, and turning a family matter into a legal assault. I offered my response since everyone was simply sitting there waiting for it. She didn't borrow money, I said. She took it. She used my credit card to pay for her honeymoon, and she had no intention of telling me until I did. She also disregarded me when I begged for it back. I did in fact take her to court. Nobody spoke. After that, I turned to my parents and mentioned that the rent I've been contributing to ends this month. I'm finished. It landed hard. The change was palpable. My mother's expression altered. My dad leaned forward as if he had just heard something incorrect. Maya blinked slowly as if her mind was still processing information. Finally, Lily appeared to be pierced by something. I gave her a direct look. I'll tell them everything myself if you don't tell the truth. She realized she was in a tight spot, yet she hesitated. So she spoke the truth for the first time in weeks. She acknowledged using my card. She said that she believed she could discreetly replace the money before I noticed. She acknowledged that she was ashamed and kept the fact that I had been assisting with the rent a secret. She acknowledged, however, that she didn't think I would take any action. After being silent the whole evening, my grandmother eventually spoke out. Lily, you lie not only to Ethan, but to everyone. That breaks something. It was all a haze after that. My father inquired about the commencement date of the rent payments. My mother was curious as to why she was never informed. Lily attempted to change the subject by saying that she had already done it to herself and that I didn't need to set everyone against her. When the argument began, I departed, leaving them to handle the consequences. I didn't have to remain and see things fall apart. I had previously been in the debris. She sent me one message that evening. We'll work things out ourselves. Joyful. I was for the first time, so I didn't respond. At least on the surface, nothing happened after that night. No one could lie any longer since the family gathering had peeled down the veil. After confessing, Lily made an effort to hide, but the harm was already done. In front of everyone, the tale she had been spreading, the one in which I was the bad guy, fell apart. She wasn't only ashamed, the fact that she had to acknowledge it infuriated her. My dad phoned me 2 weeks later to let me know that she and Jordan had left their apartment. Without my assistance, they couldn't pay the rent. Until they could work things out, they were staying in a friend's guest room. He stated that as though I ought to have felt sorry for him. I didn't. Lily wasn't finished, though. It turns out she was hazardous because she lost control. She was no longer able to extract money from me. Thus, she chose what she believed to be the second best option, my standing. She began accusing me of ruining her marriage, threatening Jordan, and manipulating her by bringing up old memories from our childhood. It didn't matter what the last part was meant to represent. I had no idea. The truth wasn't her aim. It was retaliation. For a while at least, some of it stuck. I used to get texts from a relative every 2 weeks, but she stopped answering. This year, an uncle who always asked me to Thanksgiving didn't. When I ran into some family friends I hadn't seen in a long time, they began acting strangely. Not a single explosive. Simple things. Fewer grins, less heat, cold shoulders that were previously absent. She was putting social pressure on me, one dialogue at a time. So I offered her an alternative. A message was sent to her. You continue to tell lies. I'll begin. Not only to your family, but also to your landlord, your former supervisor, anyone who believes you to be reliable. She halted but did not respond. Though they ceased spreading, the rumors did not go away. She must have realized how much worse her life may go with even a little more fallout. Jordan made one attempt to get in touch. By the way, I didn't want any of this according to this strange email sent in the middle of the night. All I wanted to do was maintain harmony. I didn't answer. I refused to extend forgiveness just because someone endured a catastrophe in silence. They contributed to the creation. Lily never fulfilled the court's order to pay the entire sum. Over the following several months, she paid 3 partial payments, most likely to avoid having her wages garnished. I hope this ends at os was written on the letter that accompanied the last one. Legally, it did, but when I said I was done, I meant it. Rent is no longer due. Don't do any more favors, no more quiet. I still visit some of my relatives too, those who were concerned enough to inquire about the truth. The others are free to hold on to whatever beliefs help them feel better. That's okay with me. Give them a chance to guess. The final payment arrived silently. No explanation, no apologies. I just received a notice from PayPal with precisely $172.43. A note too. I hope this is the end of it. After reading it through 3 times, I shut down the app and carried on with my day. There was no sense of closure. Not precisely, but sufficient. Most of the folks who had been silently criticizing me were either silent by then or slowly making their way back. Following the family gathering, my ex-ghost cousins began to re-like my postings. I was even asked if I wanted to have coffee by one of them. Apologized. With Lily, things became really strange. I was unaware of the whole story. I didn't remember, but I also didn't harbor resentment. Since the family meeting, Lily and I had not communicated. There was nothing spectacular or aggressive about our stillness. It was just sturdy, similar to a wall. Both of us decided to give up climbing. She gave up trying to make things work. I ceased searching for indications that she might mature. We used to share a house and a last name, but now we are strangers. It was funny since everything seemed so natural, after I cut her off entirely. No more texts requesting assistance in the middle of the month. No more hushed favors were exchanged. Mom, no more acting as though nothing was wrong, only to maintain harmony at the dinner table. I began interacting with folks who had no expectations of me. Those who remarked, "You did what had to be done," yet remained silent during the drama. I received a text message one day from an unidentified number. "This is Jordan," was just mentioned. "It has been a disaster, I know. Our goal is to get everything back on course. Lily has been attending counseling. She desires to speak. If you ever care about it, perhaps apologize. Simply state the time." After staring at it for a time, I decided to remove it. She could have been attending treatment. It didn't matter if she truly wanted to apologize. The harm was already done. Not only the litigation, the falsehoods, or the money that was stolen. The thing that stayed with me was how simple it had been for her to ignore me when things became tough. It wasn't a simple error on her part. She lied about it, planned it, and carried it out. Tried to make fun of me for not rolling over. You don't send a text message after that. Your spouse passed off the apology. Blood is said to be thicker than water. However, whomever stated that was never held accountable for the fallout after their identity was utilized for a tropical trip. In other words, there was no spectacular final clash. Not with pardon. Only the decision. She decided to go too far. It didn't matter that I didn't pretend it did. That concludes the chapter. I have nothing negative to say about her. I have absolutely no wishes for her. 3 calm weeks had passed. No family trouble, no consequences, no updates. Nothing but quiet, the type that becomes a part of you once you've finally closed a door that needs to be closed. Since that final PayPal note years ago, I hadn't heard from Lily, and to be honest, I didn't anticipate doing so. What she had stolen. She burned every bridge she came across before vanishing into her own disaster. Before she came to knock on my door. Just after 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. I was half asleep on the couch watching a game. I was roused from my weekend daze by the faint but sufficient knock. She was by herself when I opened the door. No spectacular arrival, no makeup, just holding a manila folder to her chest while wearing a sweatshirt. She appeared unsteady but not precisely broken. As if they had suddenly learned they had no more options. She made no request to enter. "I need 10 minutes, I said. Despite my hesitation, my curiosity won out. I moved to make room for her. She didn't sit, just opened the folder while standing at the kitchen counter. 3 items were found inside a letter, a local legal aid agency paper, and a printout containing a list of names and numbers. She gave me the letter first, and as I read it, she remained silent. There was no apology, not quite. It resembled a confession more. She enumerated all the lies she had told our family, claimed to be aware of her actions and to wish to take responsibility for them even if she didn't expect forgiveness. She even acknowledged that she fabricated stuff up to boost her self-esteem. Her statement that you were the only one who ever gave without asking struck a chord with me the most. It was only when I lost everything else that I realized how badly I had misused that. There was a list on the second page, names of our family members and acquaintances, relatives, aunts, a few folks from our former neighborhood. There was a message beside each name. Call, some said, messaged according to others. 3 were noted as being in progress. I inquired about the list. Everyone I lied to, she said. I'm figuring things out. She then gave me the legal assistance document. It was a record of consultation. It seems that 2 weeks ago, Jordan formally filed for separation. He left home and was now residing in Texas with his brother. Lily claims that he informed her that he wasn't prepared for this kind of strain and that he didn't want to bear the burden of her errors any longer. She didn't weep, she didn't plead. She only observed me while I processed everything. She said, "I'm not here to make amends with you. I simply didn't want someone else to tell you about it." I inquired about her expectations of me. Nothing. I said, she said, "I'm repairing the damage I caused. That takes into account what I mentioned about you." I said very little. Before she departed, I just nodded and wished her well. At the door, she hesitated, said, "I know you don't owe me a second chance, but you know where I am if you ever decide you don't want to be family again." She left after that. After that, I stood there with the list for a long time. I'm not sure if she's changing or if she's simply attempting a different approach since she has run out of alternatives. However, she didn't try to sell me anything for the first time in a long time. Just facts and damage control, no pressure or manipulation. I have not inquired further. I haven't checked to see whether she has phoned the remaining individuals on the list. However, I retained the letter. Not because I'm forgiving of her. Not quite yet. Perhaps never, but I felt compelled to witness her accept responsibility at last, even though it was too late to repair the damage she had caused. Story 3. In order for my parents to keep the house, I paid off $7,800 in delinquent taxes. Facebook informed me a month later that they had given my sister an engagement party in the garden. I was not invited. According to my dad, it would be too dramatic to involve you. I simply grinned. My name was taken off the deed. The property tax account was frozen. Something about the property had changed by dawn. It began on a Thursday afternoon when my mother called. She sounded anxious, the sort of tension that nearly sounds as though she was attempting to convey urgency over the phone. They were having difficulty. According to her, a mortgage payment from years ago had blown up into something enormous, and my dad had made some mistakes with his pension papers. The house was in danger because of my sister, my parents, and the mortgage. She had recently returned home from another unsuccessful relationship. Then the $7,800 request was made. That was the precise figure, not at $8K. They seemed to have spent weeks calculating the numbers, as if it weren't spontaneous. In a lighthearted manner, my mother referred to it as a parental tax. It was lovely like that. She explained that I was investing in our heritage by keeping the house in the family. I requested her father's opinion. After a little pause, she stated that although he was on board, he wasn't happy about needing assistance. That was his specialty. Pride. He was evident even when we were children. Assisting was a sign of weakness, and weakness was not accepted. They wanted me to be the safety net, and here I am. I told them I gave it some thought. I didn't sleep that night after that. It wasn't as if I had cash on hand. It's where I work. Freelancer working remotely. I don't spend a lot of money and have been successful at saving. This felt near enough, but that money was for emergencies. I reasoned that by helping today, perhaps something long-term will be built. I may get a portion if we ever had to sell the house. Or we could get together and discuss real estate equity if things were better. Put it in writing. I transferred the $7,800 2 days later. Thank you, they said. My mother texted a few emoticons. Mansos. My father said absolutely nothing. For the following 3 weeks, I didn't hear anything. I occasionally check my texts. Then I happened to see it one random Sunday morning while browsing Facebook and eating leftover Chinese food. Pictures, dozens of them. With a ring on her finger, my sister smiles. I was standing next to a stranger. Banners and balloons. They are cheesy. Since the pictures were taken in our backyard, or what felt like mine, she said yes. The patio has leased tables with centerpieces and string lights hanging over it. Everyone was present. Relatives, former neighbors, my mother's knitting club. Toasts were made. Provide tables. Even a karaoke machine was provided. I wasn't present. I was unaware that it was taking place. I continued to browse the pictures in hopes of seeing a hint that I had just overlooked the invitation. It could have ended up in spam. I hadn't missed the call though. No message, no tag, nothing. I thought I had been punched. It was worse though, as though I had hired them to do it. I gave my father a call. Like he normally does, he picked up on the second ring. Half busy, half bored. About the party, I inquired. He didn't say sorry. He simply shouted, "Too much drama for you to hear." That was it. No shame, no explanation. I ended the call. I didn't bother to return the call. 2 days later, they texted me to ask whether I had seen the images, but I didn't respond. Then the strange things began to occur. When I was still living at home, I received a letter from a joint account that was once used to handle our expenses years ago. It had survived somehow and my name was still on it. No more. They had removed me. It wasn't only dormant, I couldn't get in. I then went to see how the storage unit I had been paying for was doing. They ran out of room, so I let them use one. Something didn't feel right even though I hadn't required anything from it in months. Approximately 1/3 of the container was empty when I opened it. My belongings, which I knew should not have been transferred, were gone. My old snowboards, a unique speaker set that I had intended to restore, and my grandfather's handcrafted wood box. Lost. I sent my mother an SMS. No response. Called. No response. It truly hit me at that point. They weren't simply being careless here. This was intentional. The lost stuff, the party, the money, and the withdrawal from accounts. They were interrupting me, quiet and clean. They pretended that I didn't exist in exchange for the over $8,000 I had given them. To be honest, I should have anticipated it. The fact that I moved away never pleased my dad. The favorite was always played by my sister, Mom. All she ever did was strive to maintain harmony. Anybody she had to disregard in order to do it, however, I wasn't going to ignore it. They believed that I was the one who was calm, aloof, and simple to employ. However, they were going to discover the consequences of backing the wrong person into a corner. There would be no loud retaliation. It would be a surgical procedure. I kept what had occurred to myself. Not immediately. It's not the sort of topic you bring up informally. How your own parents embezzled your money, had an uninvited party, and discreetly removed you from any reference to joint ownership. In any case, the majority of my pals wouldn't have trusted me. When people were looking, my parents had always acted like the amiable, eccentric suburban couple. My sister was regarded by everyone as lovely and nice. Only those inside the barriers could see the manipulation. I ceased communicating with them. Weeks went by. I then got to work making plans. Loud retaliation isn't gratifying. Noise is expected. The tiny things are what they don't anticipate. The little changes that begin to cause people to wonder whether they're losing control. Justice was not what I want. I wanted them to feel uneasy. One piece at a time, I wanted the appearance of security to go. I started by removing my name from the family phone plan. For years, it has been in my name. Despite this, they never made timely payments on the debt. I didn't alert them. I just turned it off and observed the fear unfold. A slew of frantic emails from my mother's former workplace. The taxes followed. Every year, my dad would ask me to assist him with his filing. He said he didn't understand that nonsense. He was unaware that I maintained records. All costs, all deductions. I listed the $7 and $800 as a personal loan and submitted an adjustment on my return. The default was then reported. That provided me enough legal clout to persuade the IRS to look into their abrupt changes in cash flow. I didn't tell them. I simply allowed the letters to begin to arrive at their door. The third cut was more profound. My prior tech licenses have always been used by them. Photoshop, last cut. I still have some old cloud storage linked to my company accounts. I entered and shut them out. The shared folders were erased, denied them access to the disk that included all of their family history photos and videos. My mother texted me perplexed. For the first time in months, I received a message from my sister inquiring whether I had changed the passwords by mistake. I didn't respond. The relative then arrived. It was Uncle Gary, who was always the go-between in family disputes, always attempting to use tape rather than nails to fix things. On a Tuesday evening, he contacted me and said he wanted to speak without taking sides. He was concerned that I was having a breakdown since he had heard from my dad that I had been acting strangely. More than anything else, that infuriated me. I described the incident. The theft, the money, the erase. He didn't seem horrified, but he did sound astonished. It was in his voice that I heard. He had previously saw them engage in similar actions in more minor ways. However, he may have argued that you just misinterpreted the circumstances. Perhaps they were simply overwhelmed. I informed him that I wasn't seeking guidance. He claimed to have spoken with them. I advised him against it. I began researching my legal alternatives. Here's the problem, though. They exercised caution. There was nothing in writing, no agreements. After the wire transfer, there is no paper trace for the funds. In a technical sense, I handed it to them. It wasn't fraud legally, simply betrayed. I thus did what I didn't want to do. I didn't give up because I was content with it. Taking this to court would have brought me down with it, not because they deserved peace. I was also exhausted by the idea of having to spend months or perhaps years recovering a few $1,000s from two individuals who refused to acknowledge their wrongdoing. The effort wasn't worth it. However, that did not imply their safety. They were going to get something not directly from me but from the mess they made, and I had no intention of stopping it. I intended to observe. I did nothing significant. I simply stopped taking care of the little things. No more unannounced payments to assist with property taxes when they forgot. No more Venmo transactions in an emergency. When my sister's dog's veterinarian required a last-minute copay, I entirely vanished from the family economy. At first, there were only faint ripples in the silence rather than any waves, but if you wait long enough, ripples turn into tides. It began with a vehicle. For a long time, the family SUV had been on the verge. They drove it into the ground while ignoring the upkeep. One afternoon, my father gave me a call. The voicemail only stated that they were unsure of what to do and that the broadcast had been filmed. I may have been able to assist them locate a mechanic a year ago. I just erased the message this time. I learned that they needed to get a loan to replace it 2 weeks later. Gary, a dodgy uncle, casually brought it up as if it were simply bad luck, but I knew otherwise. I was now no longer the fallback option, as they were sinking. The IRS letters thereafter become more frequent. Apparently, they hadn't correctly submitted some money, therefore something in my brief report must have been amiss. My dad had some sort of extra income from a previous contractual job. They owed penalties now and they had no idea how to pay for it because they had stopped looking into their affairs. My mother was the first to lose it. A month later, she sent me an email. It is only a subject line, nothing special. Can we have a conversation? There was simply one sentence in the message. I apologize for not responding. Not quite yet. Before they glanced in the mirror, I wanted to know how far they had let this to go. Nor was my sister doing well. Jason, her fiancé, proved to be less attractive than they all made him up to be. Due to some highly visible online disputes between the two of them, word spread that he had been gambling excessively. The garden where they hosted the engagement party became her cigarette break area once she returned to live with my parents full-time. They all began extending their hands. Initial gentle touches. My father didn't say sorry. He would never. However, he shared an essay on forgiveness for the small message to me via email. Well worth reading. When I saw that, I burst into laughter. As if we were going to act as if nothing had occurred. As if I was simply in a foul mood and harbored resentment for too long. The length of my mom's communications increased. She evoked childhood recollections for me. Our snake slide in the backyard. Sunset hot dogs. How if I agreed to help clean the garage she used to let me miss church. The emotional pressure was strong. She wished for things to return to their previous state. That would never take place. I did, however, write her back. I thanked her for the message. I told her I might consider coming over sometime. I didn't guarantee anything. Because this is what they haven't yet realized. I wasn't going to ruin it, but I also wasn't going to mend what they had damaged. I was going to silently let it decay, in the same manner that they attempted to remove me. And a part of me was curious to see what would remain once they stopped receiving the assistance they pretended they didn't require. I didn't go for a few months. I silently observed without making a call. The house began to change. In an attempt to generate additional revenue, they put one of the bedrooms up for rent on a website. Before the visitors posted a public review about the owner's loud nighttime arguments and the daughter's hour-long sobbing in the garage that lasted for 2 weeks. Anyone could see that on the internet. My father attempted to have it removed. It remained up. The foreclosure warning then appeared. Not from them. Obviously not. Only when I received a letter from the mortgage lenders did I learn about it. My name must still have been floating around somewhere, most likely prior to my removal. Although it was near, it wasn't a final notification. They were going to drown. At last, my mother wanted to meet up in person. Yes, I replied. Halfway between our locations, we met in a diner. Seeing her like that was strange. No jewelry, no makeup. There was only a phone and coffee in front of her. Like she was waiting for someone to help her, she kept checking. She expressed regret for all she had said. Not in the ostentatious manner that some people do, but rather in the manner that someone apologizes when they are at a loss for words. She did not justify it. My dad wasn't the cause of it. She just stated that they were wrong to assume that I would permanently leave, because they didn't believe I would truly give up on them. I inquired about her desires. All she wanted, she claimed, was for things to feel normal again. I promised to give it some thought. The best I could do was that. I didn't return to the home, though. Then no, not for 4 more months. My Uncle Gary sent me a note that simply said, "You should see it," which is why I did. I took a car out there. The backyard appeared to be smaller, not in a bodily sense. However, the enchantment had vanished. There were patches in the grass. The celebration lights were still in place. However, half of them failed. There were dents in the garage door. The windows appeared foggy. It was terrible inside. There are boxes all over the place. My sister's belongings. Every embellishment. Unopened correspondence. When I stepped in, my dad hardly gave me a glance. After just nodding, he walked out of the room. My sister said absolutely nothing. The wild part. They were barely hanging on. The money was never mentioned. Not once. No promise of repayment. No recognition that I had lost years of trust and about $8,000. That part of it seems to have just disappeared from their account of events. I didn't resist. I refrained from pushing. Before I arrived that day, I had already made up my mind. I had no intention of forgiving them. Not at all. However, life had already taken care of that for me, so I wasn't going to punish them anymore either. After they cut me out, they made poor choices every time. They stretched every dime too far and slashed every corner. It always caught up with them when they leaned on pride rather than humility. I didn't require retribution. All I had to do was leave long enough for the quiet to achieve what the sound could not. Anthony's hadn't contacted me in years. She was the oldest sister of my mother, the person who invariably found himself at the center of everything. Even if she claimed to detest drama, she swept in with her dry turkey and unwanted advice at Thanksgivings, which is how I usually remembered her. I hadn't heard from her since I graduated from college. Not even after her spouse died, and I texted her. I didn't answer when she contacted me unexpectedly and left a voicemail about family traumas and mending. She sent a package of lemon bars to my door 3 days later. She wasn't invited in. That's how she behaved. Didn't matter. She continued as she stood in the hallway saying that although families break up all the time, we might have let this to ruin ours. The money was not mentioned by her. She made no mention of the party, the loss of the storage, or the freezing of my account. Instead, she stated things like, "Your parents love you even though they're not perfect and under a lot of stress." I gave her space to speak. She finally arrived at the true cause for her visit. "Tom," she said, "that residence is necessary for them. You have a life, a job, and a place of your own. But all they have is that house." That made me flip a switch. As quietly as possible, I asked her whether she believed that what they had done was acceptable. She could cut through me the moment I became inconvenient if she thought it was okay for them to use me as a safety net, since I had something going for me. She was uneasy but not shocked. I learned all I needed to know from it. She mentioned that my mom never intended things to get this bad and that my dad was too proud to seek for forgiveness. She continued by saying that my sister was having difficulties and that the entire situation was destroying her. I laughed out loud at that one. My sister had never contacted me. Without even sending a thank you text, she used my money to throw a backyard party. I was meant to feel horrible now. One of Anthony's last remarks really resonated with me. "Tom, this can only be fixed by you. You were always the sensible one." That was the issue. I had always been viewed by them as the calm, sensible, and unobtrusive person, the one they could steal from without worrying about the repercussions. When she departed, I didn't bid her farewell. My mother sent me a lengthy email a few days later. The conversation shifted from small talk to a lecture. She said that Anthony had informed her that I was still upset over my coldness. She expressed her hurt in her writing. I had replied that I was mired in the past and they were only attempting to move on. The money was not mentioned and their actions were not acknowledged. Only deflection. "I wish I would remember what family meant," she remarked. I spent some time sitting with that one, pondered the significance of family to them. It indicated unwavering devotion. There was only one sacrifice to be made. When they went over the line, it meant quiet. I didn't answer. And based on what I heard largely from Uncle Gary once more, things weren't getting better at the home. They were dying over the SUV loan. The mortgage was still past due. My sister was attempting to begin event organizing after quitting her part-time work. Side business that would not go away. My mom was attempting to seem like nothing was wrong and my dad was avoiding conversation. The sewer was being circled by them. Here's the worst part though. They hadn't promised to pay me back yet. Not even a reference to it, not even a pledge to finally put things right. Not at all. Money was irrelevant, as if it were a natural part of my family function, to offer without anticipating anything in return. I gave up on them ever understanding at that point. They failed to see the wrongness of their actions. They viewed my response as the issue. I considered filing a lawsuit once more. Even a lawyer came to see me. But what did he say? I was well aware that the battle would be drawn out nasty and uncertain. To be honest, I was exhausted. I'm sick of pursuing those who see my goodness as a sign of weakness. So I paused. I ceased responding to their texts. I ceased communicating with family members. I no longer pondered if or when they would ultimately provide a meaningful apology. Let them believe that I was aloof. Give them the impression that I was aloof. They made their decisions. They might now reside with them. It was over a year before I saw my parents again. My mom came up with the concept. She emailed again, shortly. Not sentimental. She just stated that she will be in the park close to their home on Sunday at noon, if I desire to accompany her. No expectations, no pressure. I spent some time looking at that message. I nearly erased it. However, I was sick of keeping everything in a state of stagnation. I didn't want to find closure. Answers were not what I was seeking. All I wanted to do was meet her gaze. When I arrived, the park was peaceful. Arms encircling her, she sat by herself on a seat close to the pond. It wasn't chilly though. I spent a few minutes sitting next to her. We remained silent. Then, without looking at me, she said, "Nothing that occurred to you was your fault." The first genuine apology was that. Not flawless, real, but not comprehensive. She made no attempt to defend my father. She didn't defend my sister in any way. She said she had no intention of controlling me. They said they could manage things on their own and were too embarrassed to acknowledge when they couldn't when they asked for the money. She said that in an attempt to hide what they didn't want to face, they made matters worse. I nodded without responding much. I expressed my belief in her. For a time, we sat there, discussed nothing regarding a deceased neighbor. A bird repeatedly constructed a nest under their gutter, minor details. She appeared older than I had recalled. That day, I didn't see my dad. I didn't ask, and she didn't offer. There was no climactic hug, no healing moment. There was only a silent realization that something was amiss. Additionally, it might not be completely fixable. It didn't have to continue to fester, though. I have yet to receive my money back. She didn't mention it. I was aware that they lacked it, and if they had, I knew they would have wasted it again. Normalcy was never restored. I skipped the family vacations. I didn't make weekly calls. I hardly spoke to my sister. A year later, she became engaged once more. This time, I saw pictures online of someone else. One more party in the garden. I was not invited, but I no longer felt angry. I allowed it to shrink into something manageable so I wouldn't have to deal with it. I respond to my mom's emails, albeit we don't communicate very often, and that's my only possession. For now, room. Not pardoning. Remembering. Just enough room to move about. People don't tell you about relatives because of it, betrayal. It never truly goes away. It simply becomes quieter. There are days when you forget it exists. On other days, it surprises you like a splinter in your flesh. You learn to quit attempting to pull it out, though, after a while. Simply put, you don't touch it anymore. There had been silence for some while. My mom sends me emails every 2 weeks. Not a little heady, I hadn't seen my father yet. I have yet to hear from my sister. I had come to terms with the fact that our paths were now parallel, both close and far, entirely distinct in all other respects. Then I received an SMS from an unidentified number last week. It was a picture of a printed legal notice that was affixed to my parents' front door. It was a close-up photo shot by someone. There was a note beneath it. I assumed you would be curious. They are being forced to leave. No signature, no name. That's all. I initially believed it to be a fraud. I even let out a tiny laugh. However, upon closer inspection, I noticed the county seal, actual notification, actual address, actual date. In 10 days. They were taking the house I paid to help save. I didn't give them a call. I made no inquiries. I waited. And my mother called 2 days later. She sounded different this time. Not damaged, just finished. They were no longer able to make their payments, she claimed. They took out a loan for the SUV and it blew up. The mortgage was already past due. The deadline for my dad's application for an emergency aid program had passed. I don't know where they're going yet, she added. Then she revealed something unexpected to me. The storage container was the only item they still owned, the one for which I had paid initially. Without asking, they drained it out. According to her, some of my belongings were still inside. She handed over the keys. Whatever was left, she added she wanted me to have it, like all the others that call terminated. Don't discuss money, not to add the $8,000 I put into their crisis. Just a kind farewell like we had discussed yesterday. But I couldn't get the call out of my head. Not guilt, not sympathy. Something more pointed. Because my sister had resumed blogging when they were packing boxes, avoiding creditors and losing the house. Not in reference to the eviction. Not to lend a hand. She was in Las Vegas. Selfies beside a pool with cocktails in hand were all over her Instagram. I didn't recognize the guy who was hanging off her. The motel was labeled by her, among the better ones. She was enjoying cocktails in a cabana the same week as the bank was taking over her home. Not once had my mother brought her up. I showed a buddy the post. He wanted to know whether I would approach them and perhaps use it as leverage. I knew what was going to happen, so I told him no. They would claim that she was stressed that she needed the vacation and that things weren't as they seemed. It wasn't. So I didn't respond. I kept the post to myself. I said nothing at all. I simply put it in the mental file under Reasons I Don't Go Back, and in silence. I began planning a visit to the storage facility with no intention of taking anything back, to see what remained.